Martin was keeping some college kid on the side. Young, full of life. Martin had a stomach condition, but he'd still take a drink for the kid. My boy's a lightweight. I'll take that for him. Even when he was swamped with work, he'd let the kid sit next to him and play games on his phone. Getting your ass kicked again? Give me that. Martin was sure I'd stick with him forever. No strings attached, even if he got married, had kids, and messed around on the side. But he didn't know. I was about to fucking die. Later, Martin saw my bucket list for the last 2 months of my life. He went insane with jealousy. James, these were your last wishes? Why isn't a single one of them about me? It was the first time Martin forgot my birthday. The food on the table had been reheated I don't know how many times. The lights were off. For a second, it felt like I was a kid again. Back in that dark, damp old house, all alone while my dad was out at sea. Feels like my whole life has been about waiting. Waiting for Dad to come home. Now waiting for Martin. The clock on the wall ticked past 11. I gave myself an ultimatum. If Martin wasn't back by midnight, with no call or text, then screw it, I was done waiting. Midnight came and went. Then 1 o'clock. The bastard really wasn't coming back. The food on the table was cold. The sauces congealed into a greasy film. I grew up poor and can't stand to waste anything, so I ate it all. My stomach felt like it was going to explode, but my heart was still empty. I remembered the birthdays Martin and I used to spend together. We were broke back then. 2 poor kids celebrating in a cramped basement apartment, unable to afford even the cheapest little cake in the bakery window. In the end, we bought a plain dinner roll and stuck a candle in it from the corner store. And we made our wishes. I think that was the first time I'd ever seen Martin cry. Damn it, he swore. A rare thing for the usually calm and collected man he was. Why should you have to suffer like this with me? James. He always called me that, but I always thought it made me sound like some kind of pet. When I make it big, I'm gonna buy you all the most expensive, most beautiful birthday cakes in the world. I'll make up for every single birthday I owe you. A wave of nausea hit me. I leaned over the table and threw up. At the end, there was blood. A shocking, bright red in the trash can. It's nothing. Stomach cancer. A little blood is normal. I suddenly remembered the photos someone had sent me a few days ago. Martin, taking his new boyfriend out for his birthday. Knowing the kid had a sweet tooth, he'd filled a room with expensive cakes. Hundreds of them. Anything to make him happy. But today was my 29th birthday. No cake, no candle, no birthday wish. Just a stark white medical report on the table, silently pronouncing my death sentence. James Vance, male, 29 years old. Stomach cancer, terminal. I didn't sleep all night. I started packing my bags. You can really tell I grew up poor. I couldn't bear to part with anything. These Louis Vuitton shoes were the first thing Martin bought me with his first real bonus. Over $1,000, that was half a year's expenses for us back then. That watch was my birthday gift from 2 years ago, a custom-made piece. And, whatever. I sighed. I took all the valuable stuff. It's not like Martin would miss the money. I took the bank cards, too. As dawn was breaking, I was dragging my suitcase to the door when Martin came home. The man was now impeccably dressed, his demeanor composed, his emotions hidden. He glanced at the suitcase and immediately knew what I was up to. What's all this fuss about now? This wasn't my first time running away. Martin was a master of the silent treatment, but I didn't have the patience for it. Every argument felt like punching a pillow, and it would keep me up all night, furious. To force him to give in, I went through a phase of storming out. I never really left, of course. I'd just drag an empty suitcase around the neighborhood. Usually, by the time I finished a meal at KFC, Martin would find me. Martin had been drinking. The smell of alcohol was mixed with some unfamiliar men's cologne. Neither of us wore cologne. So how long are you running away for this time? Going to KFC again? Or maybe grabbing a couple of bubble teas? The sarcasm in his voice stung. I took a breath and told him, Martin, I'm breaking up with you. Breaking up? He scoffed. Then his tone shifted. James, don't you want to ask me about him? Martin's face was blank. You must know I'm keeping a kid on the side. His name is Alex. There's just something about him. a fire that reminds me of you at 20. I heard the click of a lighter behind me. Martin's voice drifted over, carrying a coldness that had grown with time. He's young, clingy, and gets jealous easily. And I'm the only man he's ever been with. Even though I was ready to let him go, that single moment still hurt. I knew what Martin was getting at. He'd always held it against me that I had been with another man. 3 years ago, Martin was a rising star in Los Angeles, but he was being squeezed from all sides. His company was on the verge of collapse. Without telling him, I went to see someone. At the dinner, the big shot brought 2 business partners. I drank with them until I was coughing up blood. But they'd put something in the drinks. That night, anyway, after that night, Martin's company found its footing, got the backing it needed, and took off. Martin's status soared. He was a success, and I became the one stain on his perfect life. Snapping back to the present, I heard Martin's heavy tone. James, I have to do right by him. Fine, you do that. I threw my hands up, trying to look casual. I'll get out of your way. I grabbed my suitcase and walked out into the night without a second glance. Behind me, Martin's voice was flat. Maybe getting away will do you some good. Come back when you're done with your tantrum. James, we don't have a legal contract. I pay for everything. It's my business who I choose to support. You're right, I yelled back without turning around. You're free. Your whole family is free. Oh wait, I forgot. You're just like me, your whole family's dead. Serves you right, you lonely bastard. That fucking backstabber. The next morning, I knocked on an apartment door. A handsome, scruffy man with a 5 o'clock shadow stared at me for a long moment. James? He frantically tried to smooth down his bedhead and stepped aside. Get in here. What are you doing here? Cole. He was my best friend in college. Cole, Martin, and I were all roommates. Cole never seemed entirely straight. He even had a crush on Martin back in college. When Martin and I made it official, this guy cried himself to sleep. I told Cole everything, including the fact that I was sick. Fuck. His eyes were red as he slammed his fist on the table again and again. That bastard Martin. He shot up and headed straight for the kitchen. I'm gonna go kill him for you. I stopped him. Don't be an idiot, I said, grabbing his wrist. He was so worked up he nearly pulled me off my feet. It hurts. I wasn't being dramatic. It really hurt. The doctor said I didn't have long. But he didn't say it would hurt this damn much. What's wrong? Cole helped me up, completely flustered. His voice was already cracking. James, don't you fucking scare me. Where does it hurt? What do I do? What kind of cancer was it again? Your kidneys? Cole was a great guy in every way. Born and raised in the Midwest, nearly 6'3", loyal and kind-hearted. He just cried a little too easily. Otherwise, I never would have found out he had a crush on Martin back in the day. I remember asking him about it. He just froze for a long time, then his eyes got red, and he begged me to keep it a secret. Don't tell Martin. I promised, and I kept my mouth shut for all these years. Cole half carried me to the sofa. I took the warm water he handed me and drank a few sips. I'm okay now, Cole. I looked up at him. It was hard to ask for such a big favor. The doctor said if I don't get treatment, I might have 2 months left. For these next 2 months, can you help me? Cole's eyes instantly turned red. How long would you live with treatment? James, let's do the treatment. If you don't have the money, I do. With treatment, maybe an extra month? The cancer has spread everywhere. Treatment would just be about dragging it out. Cole, I don't want to spend my last few days hooked up to machines, not really living. You get that, right? If it's not too much trouble, I'm putting the last 2 months of my life in your hands. With that, I handed him a bank card. This is the money I've saved. When I die, it's all yours. Use it to get married. Stop talking about dying, Cole said, his face grim. He shoved the card back into my pocket. You take your money and you live to be 100, you asshole. I made myself a bucket list. With my life coming to an end, there were too many things I wanted to do. I kept cutting it down, simplifying it until only a few things were left. The first thing, I wanted to see the celebrity I'd admired for years, Julian Vance. I'd been a fan since high school. but I was probably a bad fan. I never got into stan culture or bought any merch. I just quietly liked him for years, watching him shine on stage, and then watching his star slowly fade until people started calling him a has-been. I never thought about meeting him before, but now that my life was ending, it felt like a regret. Why did I waste all my youth and energy on that son of a bitch Martin? My original plan was to meet him at the airport or go to one of his events. But Cole is a true friend. He messaged Julian's team every day, pulled every string he could, and somehow he actually got in touch with him. Julian Vance agreed to meet me. The thought of a private meeting with my idol of so many years, I was so nervous I could have died. I tried to light a cigarette to calm my nerves, but couldn't get the lighter to work. Pathetic. Cole grumbled from beside me, took the cigarette, lit it, and stuck it back in my mouth. That evening, Cole suddenly got a call from Martin. "Is James with you?" Cole snorted. "None of your damn business. Shouldn't you be with your boy toy? What, did his young ass not fuck you into a coma yet?" Covered my face. I knew Cole was trying to stand up for me, but his language was a bit much. Martin was used to being treated with respect. His voice instantly went cold. "Put James on the phone." "No." Cole didn't back down an inch. "James, I know you can hear me." Martin paused. He knew better than anyone how much I loved him, which is why he could threaten me with such confidence. "Come back and we can talk this out properly. If you keep throwing a fit, you'll have to face the consequences." I didn't say anything. Martin understood. "Getting bold, are we? You better hope you die over there and never come back." He hung up, furious. Cole started cursing next to me. What the fuck is wrong with him? Does he not know you don't say shit like that? Where's my knife? I'm gonna go kill him. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Honestly, hearing Martin say that, I didn't feel much of anything. After years of his coldness and cruelty, my heart had gone numb. Besides, I really was dying soon. When you're about to die, all you want is to live your remaining days in peace. Who has the energy to get tangled up in a rotten past? Before bed, I idly scrolled through my social feed. I saw that Martin, who almost never posted, had made an update. A 9-photo grid. 2 men standing shoulder to shoulder, looking close. The man in the tailored suit was poised and elegant. His usually sharp gaze softened for the camera. His entire body language screamed indulgence for the person next to him. The young man beside him had short, dark, tousled hair. He was fair-skinned and handsome, with gentle eyes that held a look of absolute possession. How could I not know? This was Martin's new boyfriend, sending me a message through his post. He was definitely young. I zoomed in on the picture, studying his face. I finally understood what Martin meant. He really did look like me when I was younger. Not that much younger, though, right? Maybe 10 years. But time waits for no one. I was about to close the app when Cole saw the photo and fired up again. "Fuck! That son of a bitch! Where's my knife?" I met Julian Vance. The idol I'd admired for over a decade was really standing in front of me. He was wearing a simple baseball jacket and a white t-shirt. He hadn't used his terminally ill fan as a publicity stunt to alert the media. Instead, he'd taken a red-eye flight to my city to meet me privately, like a friend. In that moment, I knew. All these years, I hadn't been cheering for the wrong person. In the private room, once he understood my condition, he was quiet for a moment. "I know I should probably tell you to get treatment. If money's an issue, my foundation can help. But, to be honest, if it were me, and I knew there was no hope for a cure, I'd also choose to live my last days on my own terms." He looked at me quietly. "Do you have any wishes? If I can help, I will." "No," I said, a little starstruck. The fact that a star who was once a household name would fly to another city to meet an unknown fan was already incredibly moving. Because his schedule was tight, Julian stayed with me for almost an hour. The whole time, I felt like I was in a dream. Before he left, I worked up the courage to shake his hand. "You're going to make a huge comeback. I mean it. My gut feelings are always right, and you really, truly deserve it." Julian smiled and shook my hand. "Thank you. I hope you can live the rest of your life to the fullest, just as you wish." He gave me a slight nod. "Thank you for all the years of support." In that moment, my life, in some small way, felt briefly perfect. I didn't leave the room until long after Julian had gone. Cole was squatting in the hallway. When he saw me, he stubbed out his cigarette and waved the smoke away. So, in college, everyone in our dorm knew I loved Julian Vance. But Cole was the only one who couldn't stand him. Now, though, his attitude had completely changed. I gotta say, that Vance guy is actually pretty cool. No wonder you've liked him for so long. With that, Cole pulled out my bucket list. He drew a checkmark next to the line "Meet my idol." You holding up okay? Yeah. Alright, then on to the next one. Visit our old college campus. Cole drove me back to our old university. It had been 7 or 8 years since we graduated. The grounds were familiar, but the students were all new faces. The food stalls that used to line the street were all gone, and our favorite cheap restaurant had a new sign. Cole, however, seemed excited. James, that breakfast spot used to be a little diner, remember? You loved their chicken fried steak. You were such an idiot back then. You'd get the steak and give the best part to Martin, and you'd just eat the mashed potatoes with gravy. And that hot pot place, super cheap. The three of us would pool our money for a feast whenever we were craving it. You'd give your meat to that bastard, and I'd feel so bad for you, all skinny and small, that I'd give you some of mine. He raised an eyebrow. I was the better friend, right? Cole went on and on. But everything he said was about me. Just as I was starting to feel like something was off, Cole seemed to realize it too and pulled me into that old hot pot place. Come on, I'm starving. Let's see if the food is still any. He stopped mid-sentence. The restaurant was tiny, with only 4 or 5 tables, all in plain view. At the table in the back sat Martin and his new boyfriend. Martin, who after making it big never ate at dives like this, was cooking slices of meat for his new flame. Fuck, Cole cursed, strode forward, and punched Martin right in the face. Martin took 2 punches from him. The kid next to him, like a protective pup, immediately bristled. Who are you? What gives you the right to hit him? Cole spat. The right of being your daddy. Seeing that they were about to gang up on him, I rushed forward and shielded Cole. Martin's face was dark, his eyes sweeping over me and Cole. His voice dripped with sarcasm. So protective. What, are you two a thing now? His contemptuous gaze hit a nerve. Cole's face changed, and he raised his fist to swing again, but I stopped him. I held onto Cole's hand. It was warm, a little rough to the touch. When I grabbed it, his whole body went rigid, and all his fiery anger seemed to vanish at my touch. I don't know, maybe my being so close grossed him out. Yes. I looked at Martin calmly. I made it very clear the other day. We're broken up. Cole made a move. Stiffly, tentatively, he interlaced his fingers with mine. I held up our joined hands and smiled. This is my new boyfriend. I assume you've met? Martin said nothing, but his eyes grew colder. After all these years together, he could tell I was serious. His new boyfriend was the first to laugh. Well, that's perfect. Martin's been wanting to dump you for ages but couldn't bring himself to do it after all this time. You're surprisingly self-aware. The pain in my stomach was back. It always came without warning and was incredibly hard to bear. I leaned on Cole's arm, practically collapsing against him. Cole reacted instantly, wrapping his arm around me to hold me up. Let's go. Watching these 2 scumbags eat is making me lose my appetite. Let's go home and eat. I gripped his arm, my knuckles turning white from the pressure. The pain was so bad I could barely stand. Yeah, let's go home. We took 2 steps, and then Martin's voice came from behind us. He had been the one in control in this relationship for so long that even his attempts to be conciliatory sounded harsh. James. He paused. If you come back now, I can give you one more chance. After all, it's been 10 years. He was trying to guilt me with our history, with our shared time. But he didn't know. The most precious thing to me now was my own life, the 2 months I had left. Not him and not the past. I didn't turn back. I didn't answer. I just leaned on Cole and walked out of the restaurant. The moment Cole pushed the door open, I heard a sharp crash from behind us as something heavy hit the floor and shattered. Martin was smashing things. Martin ruined my wish to revisit my old school. I drew a heavy X next to that item on my list. Cole warmed up some milk and carefully handed it to me. Drink it while it's hot. Slowly. Thanks. He was still his usual rough self, replying casually, "You don't have to thank me for shit." Cole realized what he'd said and scratched his head, laughing sheepishly. "You know me, I'm just a little rough around the edges." It's nice. The milk was warm in my hands. It gave me a sense of settled calm. Martin was a cold person. He could go a whole day without saying more than a few words, especially after he became successful. His naturally distant personality was mixed with the arrogance of a man in power, making him even harder to connect with. Being with him for so long had been incredibly suffocating. Sometimes I even wondered if my illness was brought on by all the stress. All that repressed anger had to turn into something. "What are you thinking about?" Cole sat down next to me. He was probably craving a cigarette. He fiddled with an unlit one for a while but never lit it. "Your milk's getting cold. Hurry up and drink it." "Okay." I took a couple of sips and looked up at him. "You never really liked Martin, did you?" Cole suddenly choked on his own spit. He coughed for a while before answering, a little unnaturally, "Who else would it have been? I was young and dumb back then. It's been years. I'm fully straight now, man. I've had like 8 girlfriends. Besides," his tone hardened at the mention of Martin. "Who knew that lowlife would turn out to be such a piece of shit? I must have been blind." He patted my shoulder. "Don't worry, James. I'll never leave you. The 3rd item on my bucket list. Go up north. See real snow. I was born and raised in the South. I can only remember it snowing twice in my city, and the flakes melted almost as soon as they landed. It never even left a thin layer of white. The one good thing is that it's winter now. Otherwise, with my body in this state, I definitely wouldn't make it to next winter." Cole booked the tickets and flew me to a city that was supposed to get snow the next day. For a trip of just a few days, he packed 2 whole suitcases. They were filled with thick clothes for me. "It's cold up there, and you're weak right now, so you need to bundle up. You have to wear a hat, gloves, and a thick scarf. Oh, and a mask." The night before we left, he fussed around, packing everything. I just sat on the bed and watched him. At the end of my life, a very selfish thought popped into my head. What if the person I had ended up with was Cole? How nice would that have been? But life doesn't have what ifs. And it was a good thing I wasn't with Cole. Otherwise, with his deeply emotional nature, how devastated would he be when I died? When we got off the plane, Cole wrapped me in a long, black down jacket, then took me to the airport bathroom to change into thicker clothes. To be honest, my body was already getting weak. The disease was eating away at me bit by bit all the time. Cole was so worried that he came into the stall with me to help me change. When he reached down to help me with my pants, I stopped him. "I can do it myself." Cole froze, his face turning bright red. I didn't have any other ideas. He turned his head away. "You do it. I'll wait for you by the door. Call me if you need anything." The clothes Cole had prepared were all incredibly thick. I layered them on as he'd instructed until I felt like a clumsy teddy bear. When I pushed the door open, Cole stared at me for a couple of seconds. Then he grinned and threw his arm around my shoulders. "Let's go. Time to see some ice sculptures and eat popsicles." On the way, Cole asked me 1,000 times if I was cold. I kept shaking my head. It must have been cold. The weather report said it was well below 0. But he had bundled me up so thoroughly. From head to toe, only my eyes were showing. Even my hands were covered in fleece-lined gloves. After a while, the cotton mask grew damp from my breath. It was a little uncomfortable, but I was happy, happier than I'd ever been. I saw the ice sculptures. They came in all shapes and sizes, so lifelike they seemed almost magical. And I saw snow. I used to think the descriptions in books of snowflakes as big as goose feathers were an exaggeration. But seeing it with my own eyes, I realized it was true. The sky was full of falling snow, blurring the light from the street lamps. When it landed on my clothes, I was amazed to see it was really shaped like the snowflakes in storybooks. Nearby, people were having a snowball fight, laughing and yelling. It was incredibly lively. While Cole was busy recording a video, I bent down, packed a snowball, and hit him in the back of the neck. The snow melted down his collar, and he flinched from the cold. "Hey, a sneak attack, James?" He immediately put his phone away to get me back. But he didn't dare to throw a real one. The little clumps of snow he tossed at me weren't even half the size of my fist. Later, when he wasn't looking, I tackled him and pushed him into a snowbank. We both sank into the deep snow. Cole instinctively wrapped his arms around me to protect me. He held me tight through our puffy jackets. We rolled once. When we stopped, we were face to face. So close our noses were almost touching. Cole froze instantly. Snowflakes landed on his eyelashes, melted, and then froze again. He blinked, his movements stiff. Then he suddenly snapped out of it and pushed me away. He scrambled to his feet, flustered, then pulled me up too. Get up. The snow is cold. Are you cold? Cole bent down to brush the snow off my jacket and pants. I know a great hot pot place nearby. Come on, let's go get something warm to eat. Cole took me for hot pot. It was surprisingly delicious. The lamb was thick and didn't have a gamey taste. Mixed with pickled cabbage and drenched in sesame sauce, it was pure bliss. The only thing that ruined the mood was a phone call I got halfway through the meal. It was from Martin. Hi, we're calling from the Starlight Lounge. This gentleman is very drunk. Could you come and pick him up? No. But the person on the other end sounded troubled. You're the only emergency contact in his phone. He's very drunk, and he just threw up some blood. You should really come down here. I put a few pieces of meat onto Cole's plate, my voice calm. Then you shouldn't be calling me. You should be calling 911. With that, I hung up. Cole sat across from me, studying my expression through the rising steam. If you're really worried, I can get a friend to. I'm not. I snuck a sip of his iced beer while he wasn't looking. The meat was a little dry, much better now. Cole quickly snatched the glass back. Just one sip. No more. Okay? I nodded and said okay. But when Cole went to the bathroom, I snuck 2 more sips. If I didn't drink it now, the next time would be when Cole was pouring one out on my grave. While Cole was still in the bathroom, Martin's number called again. I declined and he called back. I blocked him and he called from a different number. I was getting fed up. What? James, the bartender told you I was throwing up blood. Why didn't you care? Martin's voice was hoarse as he questioned me. Aren't you worried? And those pictures on my feed, you saw them, right? Weren't you jealous? The more he spoke, the lower his voice became. He was even trembling slightly. James, you seem different. Why? Why? Because my heart had been put through his emotional ringer for years, and all my hope had been worn away. Because I used to worry, I used to be jealous, but it never did any good. Because I was about to fucking die. In the final stage of my life, all I wanted was to let him go, get away from him and just be myself, free and easy. Because I didn't love him anymore. I used to think that falling in love happens in an instant, but falling out of love takes forever. Now I realize that's not true. Loving someone can take 10 years, but giving up on them, sometimes that only takes a moment. Perhaps stung by my silence, Martin suddenly became agitated. Who are you with? Cole? He had a crush on you in college. What good intentions could he possibly have for you now? James, if you're jealous of Alex, I can break it off with him. I'd rarely heard him say so much at once in all these years. I know you're just throwing a tantrum. You can't just end a 10-year relationship like that, he said, trying to coax me. You took all the gifts I gave you, right? And our photos. James, I know you don't really want to break up. Stop this, okay? Receiving this call from Martin, I was much calmer than I would have imagined. The photos are burned. As for the gifts, they were too expensive to throw away, so I sold them. Martin, this is the last time I'm ever taking your call. Whatever you've done, I prefer to end things amicably. I don't want to make it ugly. And don't send anyone else to test me. We're broken up. Even if you dropped dead on the street, I wouldn't give you a second look. After I said that, I hung up. I turned off my phone. Then, after a moment's thought, I pulled out the SIM card and threw it away. I had a great time over the next few days. I saw the ice sculptures, ate hot pot, had barbecue, and saw the snow. On the way back, I drew a heavy checkmark next to this item on my list. Cole leaned over and asked me, "Why is the last item on your bucket list blank?" I smiled. Because it's a secret for now. Cole raised an eyebrow, his tone indulgent. Fine, fine. Keep your secret. When we got home, Cole was dragging a suitcase in each hand. He was dressed a little too warmly, and a layer of sweat beaded on his forehead. Seeing that his hands were full, I took a tissue and wiped his brow for him. I looked up and saw someone standing at our door. As the hallway light flickered on, Martin appeared. He had changed out of his suit and was wearing a dark casual outfit. I'd bought it for him last year. This was the first time I'd ever seen him wear it. James. He walked toward me. Cole instinctively stepped in front of me. Are you fucking stalking us? This is between me and James. It has nothing to do with you. Martin's gaze went past him, fixed on me. Can we talk? Please? I gave Alex a payout. We're done. James, he sighed. Honestly, I never wanted to break up with you. Didn't you notice how much Alex looked like you? So? I found it so ridiculous I had to ask. I'm not dead yet. Why do you need to find a replacement who looks like me? Because he's young? Or because he's clean? For the first time in years, I brought up that night. Because he's only ever been with you, right? Then what about me? You think I wanted what happened that night? Who the hell do you think I went to that dinner for? Martin, Alex isn't the first one you've found in the last few years. You think I don't know? You never say it, but in your heart you think I'm dirty. Because you can't face yourself. You're way dirtier than I am. Why were the contact details for those two executives on your desk? Was it just an accident? You didn't know beforehand that they were into men? You knew everything. You knew I would go drink with them for you to get the deal, and you even predicted what would happen that night. But you didn't tell me, you didn't stop me. You hid in the shadows and watched it all happen, and then you couldn't accept it afterward. You couldn't face me and you couldn't face yourself, so you just kept running away, right? The problem between us was never Alex. If it wasn't him, it would have been some other Chris or Matt. These were the pieces of the truth I had slowly put together over the years. Martin's face was ashen. He didn't deny it. With his mask torn away, he looked panicked for the first time, his eyes even turning red. James, let me explain. See? When I actually asked him to explain, he couldn't say a word. Because there was nothing to explain. Cole, standing next to me, didn't know the whole story, but he seemed to have understood the gist of it. His eyes instantly turned red. He looked like he wanted to scream at him, but when he opened his mouth, no sound came out. Finally, he dropped the suitcases, grabbed Martin by the collar, and slammed him to the ground, punching him again and again. Martin didn't fight back. He just lay there, a pathetic mess on the floor, his red-rimmed eyes looking at me. He couldn't say a single word. For all these years, my love and guilt had tortured me. And he, the one who benefited from it all, had played the victim for so long. He knew everything but chose to deceive himself and push all the ugliness onto me. Martin, after Cole's strength gave out and he let go, I looked down at the man on the floor, who looked like a beaten dog. The most disgusting thing that ever happened to me in my entire life was being with you. And trust me, you will get what's coming to you. I patted Cole's shoulder. Let's go home. Okay. Cole obediently picked up the two suitcases and followed me inside. For the rest of the night, he looked at me with an expression of bone-deep sympathy. He looked like he wanted to ask something but stopped himself several times. It wasn't until I was almost asleep that I heard him whisper to me, over and over, James, did it hurt? Were you scared back then? The second to last item on my bucket list. Host a concert. Not for me, for Cole. He's a rock singer. But due to the harsh realities of the business, he's not very famous. He's always dreamed of playing on a bigger stage but never had the chance. I had a lot of money from the things I'd sold. Lately, I had been secretly pulling strings, calling in favors, and spending a lot of money to organize a concert for him. The day the permits were approved, I told him. Cole was stunned for a long time. The nearly 6'3" man's eyes slowly turned red. Are you a fucking idiot? He choked out, you're in this state and your bucket list still has me on it. I'm not even famous. This is a waste of money. Who says you're not famous? I smiled at him. To be honest, I thought that if the ticket sales weren't great, I'd just hire people to fill the seats. But I didn't need to. The tickets sold out almost immediately. Cole, a lot of people love you. They love your music. In the days that followed, I went with Cole to his band practices every day. With a guitar in his hands, Cole seemed to glow. He would ramble on and on about his dreams for the show. On the night of the concert, you're gonna sit in the front row, right in the center where I can see you. How about we wear matching outfits? You better clap for me from down there. If I catch you slacking off, you don't get dinner. Do you think I'll be too nervous and forget the lyrics at my first concert? I smiled and said he wouldn't, but my smile felt a little forced. I quietly watched the bright, happy man beside me, an unbearable sadness welling up inside. I felt so sorry for him. My final wish was something I had written and erased many times. I had thought about getting revenge on Martin, but it felt like a waste to use the last of my energy on a worthless person who was no longer part of my life. I wanted to use my remaining strength to put on a concert for Cole, to watch him shine on stage. But I overestimated my own body. It seemed I wasn't going to make it to his concert. James is dead. That liar. He threw me the first concert of my life. But he didn't show up. He died on a rainy day. That night, we had both gone to bed when he suddenly said he wanted to hear me sing. I groggily said okay and sang one of his favorite Julian Vance songs. When I finished, he didn't say a word. I laughed and said, "Did you fall asleep? Am I singing you a lullaby?" But when I leaned over to tuck him in, I realized something was wrong. James was gone just like that, without a sound. In the middle of my song, I must have been in too much shock, too much grief, too much panic, because my memory of that night is a blur. There are even gaps. I don't even remember how I called the ambulance, or how I got to the funeral home. On the day of the funeral, it was raining endlessly, as if the heavens themselves were mourning his passing. Somehow, Martin heard the news and rushed over, wearing an ill-fitting, wrinkled black suit. It looked like the one James had saved up to buy for him years ago. I remember it. James asked me to go shopping with him. The man was a fool, skipping meals and breaking a single bun in half to eat over 2 days, just to save up for months to buy a suit for Martin, who was just starting his business. But after Martin made it big, that suit sat at the bottom of a closet, collecting dust for years. Martin's face was pale. He staggered to James's memorial photo, his lips trembling, unable to speak. I walked up and kicked him behind the knee. "Now that you're here, kneel down and light some incense. Who are you trying to fool with this deep love act?" Martin fell to his knees, his hands clenched into tight fists, slamming them on the floor again and again. Blood seeped out, slowly staining the tiles red. "Why?" He was sobbing. "Why didn't he tell me he was sick? I have money. I could have gotten him the best doctors, the best medical team, maybe he could have been cured. Why didn't he tell me he was sick?" Martin pushed himself up from the floor and looked at me, hoping I could give him an answer. I stared at him coldly, because in his heart you were a nobody, a stranger. Who tells a stranger whether they live or die? The light in Martin's eyes dimmed. Then he saw the piece of paper in front of the memorial. James's final bucket list. The last glimmer of light in his eyes finally died. He suddenly burst into tears. His eyes red. He stared at James's black and white photo, nearly mad with jealousy. "James, your last wishes, why were none of them about me? You didn't want anything to do with me, even in death?" James, in the black and white photo, James was smiling gently. He would never give him an answer. I couldn't watch anymore. Just as I was about to hit him, police sirens wailed outside. Soon, officers came in and pinned Martin to the ground in front of the memorial. That's when I found out. When James said Martin would get what was coming to him, it wasn't just an empty threat. All those years he had been with Martin, from the very beginning of the company, he knew every transaction, every deal. Of course, he also knew his weaknesses. In the last moments of his life, he had turned over all the evidence of Martin's crimes to the police. I had heard a little about Martin's dealings from James. It would be enough to put him away for decades. As the police pinned him to the ground, Martin understood. He looked at James's photo in disbelief, his eyes instantly turning red. So many emotions flickered in them. Shock, grief, despair. He had always been so sure that James loved him to his very core. That's why he had dared to mess around so carelessly, to hurt James without a second thought. But he had never imagined that James would stop loving him. He had never imagined that before he left, James would personally hand over the evidence that would send him to prison. Even as the police dragged him away, Martin kept his eyes fixed on James's photo, as if silently asking him why. Looking at Martin's desperate gaze and red eyes, I only felt that it was all such a waste for James. Just crocodile tears. Was he afraid of his impending prison sentence? Or was he devastated by what James had done? Maybe both. But either way, he reaped what he sowed. After Martin was taken away in the police car, I turned back to James's photo. Hey James, see? You were right. A guy like Martin was bound to get his punishment sooner or later. In the end, I did have my first concert. I stood on a huge, high stage. In the audience, there were so many people who liked my music. The moment all the spotlights hit me, James's face suddenly appeared before my eyes. He was wearing the white shirt he used to wear in college, smiling at me, saying, "See, Cole? I told you you could do it." James was the best-looking guy I had ever seen in a white shirt. Actually, I was originally straight. I even had a crush on the prettiest girl in the class next to ours in high school. But on the first day of college, I saw James, standing tall and clean in a white shirt like a young poplar tree. And suddenly, I felt something different. But I never dared to say it. Because he had a boyfriend, Martin. If I didn't say anything, I could stay by his side as his best friend forever. If I said something, I wouldn't even be his friend anymore. So, when he mistakenly thought I had a crush on Martin, I just went along with it. The only lie I ever told James in my entire life was that I loved someone else. But I'm also glad that James died without ever knowing I loved him. That's why I could be his best friend without any awkwardness. Why I could walk with him through his final days. And why I could handle his funeral arrangements. My thoughts came back to the present. I stood on the highest stage he had pushed me onto, looking out at the sea of lights in the audience. My eyes scanned the crowd. I could still see the front row center seat. It was empty, with just a small bouquet of flowers placed on it. That was James's seat. If ghosts are real, you bet, he definitely came to my concert tonight.